All right, hello, welcome everyone. Um, we are going to go ahead and start our webinar now. Bob, Bob and Jen, if you want to take over.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Durso. I'm the Manager of Business Services here at TCIA. Thank you all for joining us today for Business Solutions webinar on building a model tree care company business with TCIA accreditation. Before I hand it over to Bob Rouse, some housekeeping items. The presentation should last around 30 to 45 minutes, and then there will be a Q&A at the end. During the presentation, we are going to keep everyone muted except the speakers. You will have the ability to ask questions anytime during the presentation by utilizing the chat option. In fact, we encourage you to toss any and all related questions into the chat because our speaker will be keeping tabs on what you want to know. We will also be providing a quick survey at the end of the presentation that we would ask you please to respond to. Your feedback will help us to improve future webinars. We will be posting the recording of this webinar on the Business Solutions page of tcia.org, which will be posted in the next few days if you have others who want to review anything mentioned today or share with someone else. Phew, okay, let's get to good stuff. I am pleased to introduce Bob Rouse. Bob is the SVP of Business Support at TCIA. He has more than 40 years of experience in the green industry, including many years as a practicing arborist. As the Senior Vice President of TCIA's Business Support Programs, Bob provides direction for TCIA accreditation programs, the Tree Care Industry Association Foundation Loss Control Program, Workforce Development, and all business support programs. In addition, Bob serves as secretary for the ANSI 300 Tree Care Standards. Bob has served TCIA and its members since 1997. All right, now I am pleased to turn it over to Bob.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so today we get to talk about something that is one of my favorite subjects, accreditation, and how it's a blueprint for a model tree care company as well. So the objective today is really just to review accreditation, answer any questions you have about it, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, you have a clear idea of what the accreditation program is, what we ask to become accredited of companies, and how you can get your company accredited, and what some of those benefits might be for you. Accreditation, it's been around for 21 years now. It was originally sanctioned by the TCIA Board of Directors in 2002. And it was really designed to meet two objectives. One was to help companies improve their business practices. So while it's a credential, it was very important at the time and still is that this program be something that is helpful to companies and helps companies improve. And then the other part of it was to provide a credential of excellence for companies, something that's a credential attached to a company that you can show your company in a way has this seal of approval. The TCIA Accreditation Council is the group that developed the accreditation standard in 2003. So the first step was writing a standard. What is accreditation? What's it going to be? Kind of like we have a ANSI Z133 standard for safety, ANSI A300 standard for tree care practices. There's a standard for accreditation. The program was launched in 2004, and then in 2006 we added third-party auditors, so contract auditors, to do the site visit part of the program. Now we have 187 companies accredited. That represents 614 branch locations. So that equates to over $1.5 billion in gross revenue in tree care sales. And it also represents over 1.4 million clients who are served each year. So it's got a pretty big footprint. And in addition to that, there's also an additional 20 companies that have utility accreditation. And if people have questions about utility accreditation, we can answer those today as well. So what is the accreditation program in its essence? What makes up the program? what type of program is it? We're going to just delve into these questions a little bit right now. Basically, in its essence, accreditation is just a checklist program. It's a 66-point checklist. Think of it as, there's certified used cars out there, right? And to get your cars as a certified used car, the dealership has to go through a checklist program. They check all these points on the car and say, yes, it can be a certified used car because it's passed this checklist. Accreditation is like that. It's a checklist program, and the accreditation standard that the council developed equates to a 66-point checklist. So it's basically 66 items that we look at to see that your company's doing. That's the credential part of it. We also, for everything we ask you to do, every one of those 66 items, we provide resources. And that's the helpful part. We didn't want to throw a checklist and a credential out there and say, hey, you need to do these things on your own. TCIA is here to help you get accredited, to help you with each one of those checklist items by providing resources that help you get accredited. Each year, we do about 120 site audits for consultation and verification of the accreditation program. Part of it is you get an on-site audit to see that you've met the checklist, but that's also a very helpful process. And then we still have a credentialing council. They originally set up the program, but they are there to kind of guide us and maintain the policies of the program. TCIA itself runs the program, runs the accreditation program. So here's what the checklist looks like. This is just a piece of it. This is the business plan piece. So this is like the first 6 items in the 66-point checklist. And you can see that's quite a bit of stuff there. It's enough to give you an ice cream headache just looking at this first part. And that's often your first or company's first response to accreditation. Is like, wow, there's a lot of things to do. But one key point here is that you can see there's 6 items on creating a business plan. Right, so each row is an item. Each row is 1 point on that 66-point checklist. But you can see in the 3rd and 4th column, for each point on that checklist, we have a resource to help you work on your business plan. We have a guide and we have a model sample tree care company business plan that you can use and model your own business plan after. So here again is the helpful part and the requirement part. And the other thing to point out is that if you use our model and you write the business plan according to our model, you knock off 6 of those checklist items all at once. So I'm going to go over that a little more. Now, here's another ice cream headache one I want to show you. When we put all the 66-point items into a visual, this is what it looks like. It's kind of scary, right? There's a lot of things in there. But in the visual, we did start to, you can see how things fall together. And they really fall into about 6 different areas that we look at. So when we start to consolidate that together, what you can see is that there's really 6, we kind of call them areas or domains in accreditation that we look at. We look at best business practices, and we help you accomplish these things. We look at compliance, so we look at your certifications, licenses, and following certain regulations like federal motor carrier safety regulations and OSHA regulations. But again, it's a helpful program, so we also help you meet those items. We look at some human resources and workforce development, sales, marketing, quality assurance, then safety program and employee training. If you're the typical tree care company, you're probably working way on the right side of these columns. Most tree care companies who come into accreditation are pretty, strong or stronger in the safety program and employee training. And as you go to the left of this towards best business practices, you might need more and more work, right? And that's what we expect when you come in. So when we applied those 66 items to these 6 domains, you can see they actually kind of spread out evenly. So there's no overweighting. There's 8 items of those 66 are in employee training, 15 are in safety program. And then when you take those items, kind of like I did with the business plan, and start grouping them together, what are we really asking you to do in accreditation? You find there's really about 10 things if you put together that we have resources for, that if you focus on, these 10 things knock off a huge amount of that 66-point checklist. Business plan, we talked about that. And compliance, most of it is OSHA, doing OSHA record keeping and meeting your DOT, your Federal Motor Safety Carrier regulations, like having driver files and inspecting trucks and things like that. Again, we have resources to help you do that. Employee handbook and performance reviews. Jen later on is going to show you some of the resources we have around things like an employee handbook. Again, doing an employee handbook would knock off a large number of the requirements in accreditation. A300 proposals, we show you how to do proposals according to A300 standards, and creating a consumer policy. Safety program, having a safety handbook and a safety program. The resource there is our I2P2 program, we call it, the Injury and Illness Prevention Program. And then training programs. And again, that's things we can help you with in the training programs. So sounds like a lot. And we started with this big scary picture here. But in reality, there's just a number of things to focus on, which really become that blueprint. If you can get these things done, it's really a blueprint for creating a model tree care company. So the accreditation process, how do you get accredited? It's really 4 simple steps. It's not a complicated process. It's going to take a lot of work. We recognize that. It's going to be incredibly helpful for you. But the process itself is really pretty simple. One, you enroll. We have an application, and you get access to the resources that I talked about. We ask that you do a mail-in, and then which is mailing in some parts of that checklist ahead of time. So one, it's helpful. We can look at what you mail in and give you some feedback. And 2, it then helps us know that you're prepared for the site visit. And that's when we have an auditor actually come out to your company. And then at that point, it's really just finishing up the items in the checklist. And for some folks, after the site visit, they're pretty much done. Enrolling, when you enroll, you get access to the accreditation community, which is where the resources are. And you see we have a resource library. We have some other things in here. Jen, after my presentation, is going to go over a walkthrough of the accreditation community and what that looks like, and how you use that. Mail-in, going back to this item, the spreadsheet screenshot I already showed you from the business plan portion. You'll get a full accreditation checklist. It's in the resource library. It's in the accreditation community. In the part highlighted in blue on the left-hand column are things we ask you to mail in. So there's a number of things we look at and ask you to mail in. And again, that's a helpful part of the program. It gets you started. It gets you some feedback. And we are very clear about what we ask you to mail in. Not every company has to mail in every single thing, but the more you can mail in and the more you can meet the things we ask you to mail in, the better it's going to be in the process. So once you do the mail in and both you as the company and we as TCIA feel you're ready for a site visit, because we all want the site visit to be successful and really want you to be accredited. We will schedule that site visit. And so here's what happens on the day of the site visit. This is our sample agenda. It doesn't always go exactly according to this agenda, but this is a sample of what usually happens because we will work with you on your day and what's actually happening at your company. But generally, the auditor is going to show up either before or as your employees usually arrive, whatever time that is. And they're going to just kind of chat and observe. We call it interviews here. It's not formal interviews. We don't sit people down and talk to them or ask a set number of questions and write answers down or anything like that. It's really informal discussions with your employees. Lots of times that's why they're working. We just chat, and really what we're doing is just get a sense of the company. And we also just watch the setup and the rollout protocol for the day, how they're setting up, how they're rolling out, and getting their assignments and going. And so it's really pretty simple, but just by having that auditor who has a lot of experience in seeing this at a number of different companies come in and observe is very helpful. So that generally, can be about an hour. The next phase is just kind of going over some of the best business practices like finances, insurance, ethics. And what we do, we do that next because that gives the crews a chance to go out, do what they have to do, get to their location, and get set up without us in the way. And then it's also usually a good point because you may have a bookkeeper, you may have a spouse, maybe you, but there may be somebody who is usually there in the morning, but might not be there in the afternoon. So we'll talk to that person at that point and go over some of those checklist items that are related to the best business practices. Um, the next thing we do are field observations. So we do go out to visit some crews. We'd like to see, if possible, a removal and pruning job. It just depends on how many crews you have deployed. If you offer PHC services, we'll try to get out and catch up with a PHC crew or technician, however you're set up there. And just depending on the setup, that can take 2 to 3 hours. But we're going to look at both how the crews work together. We're looking a lot at safety. We're also looking at A300 tree care standards, so standards of practice as well. Excuse me. And that's generally pretty straightforward. We'll then come back to the office and finish up any items on the checklist that aren't done. That's generally, we call it office review, but it's generally going to be kind of looking at employee files or training files, those sorts of things. That's where we might, look at the safety training files, maybe some human resources files, DOT, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, OSHA, record keeping, those sorts of things we would do at the end of the day. And that's usually a good time to do that. So then upon conclusion, the auditor is going to sit down and usually can give you a pretty good sense of where you stand in completing the accreditation. So the fourth part, it's called finishing up. Like I said, at the end of the day, you could pretty much be accredited, and all you're going to wait for, if you have all 66 items done, and all you're going to wait for is the auditor to send the report into TCIA and we'll finalize it, and you can be accredited at that point. Most companies aren't going to have all 66 items completed at the end of that site visit day. On average, the average company at the end of the site visit day has 2 to 3 critical actions. So I think roughly it's about 70, I want to say about 75% of the companies have a critical action, and of those, it's 2 or 3 critical actions. So what I did here in the screenshot is just showed you the legend on the report. You'll get a full report, every item, every one of those 66 checklist items will have information filled in about how you did and have a status. What you're hoping for is in each status to have an X complete. That means you completed that item. But in some cases, as I said, you may not have completed every item in that 66-point checklist. So if you haven't completed an item, we call that a critical corrective action. So that's the C equals critical corrective action. And we'll tell you exactly what you need to do to complete that action and complete the accreditation. So there's no mystery about it. We just, again, it's writing out that blueprint for you and letting you know what you need to do. In some cases, we have things called additional actions, which means you may have done most of that item, but maybe there was just something left out, something more that needs to be done, or maybe it's a completely new process. You just started it, and the auditor just wants to see that you continue to do it. So we'll check in at a later time to see that you're still doing it. So perhaps like this is going to be a real simple example, but maybe you've never done safety meetings or haven't documented your safety meetings and you're just starting to do that for your weekly safety meetings. You might get an additional action with the auditor saying, okay, you're doing these, but we're going to come in a few months later and check just to make sure things are still going good. We can have recommendations too. The auditors see a lot of companies. Everyone's covered by a confidentiality clause in the accreditation standards. So the auditor's not going to go around and say, hey, guess what? I saw at this company, company X to company Y. But the auditor can often have helpful recommendations that they will fill in if those come up. So that's the process. I did want to go over some benefits of accreditation. That's always a big question. And, one benefit that I don't think is the best reason to get accredited is to get a lot of qualified leads. Like if your motivation to get accredited is I want to get 50 more qualified leads a month through this accreditation, that's probably not going to happen. What is going to happen is accreditation helps make your company more sustainable. It gets your company organized. It gets it structured so that day-to-day operations are not always reliant on the owner. It gets your team pulling in the same direction. At a very base level, it makes TCIA the bad guy. Hey, we have to do this because we need to be accredited, get accredited. But what we really find more often that happens is that the teams your employees take it as a challenge. And they see accreditation as doing a lot of things they probably wanted to do or want to do, but don't have the time to do. And accreditation gives them a reason to pull together as a team and get it done. We do see and hear that accredited companies have sort of live in a fishbowl. They get a certain status in the industry, and that helps attract high quality employees. And there is a real savings, improved efficiency, and some benefits to having better compliance for regulatory types of things. We see some of these are quantifiable. We collect data of accredited companies. Some are a little harder to quantify, but we see that accredited companies have a 0.85 workers' comp experience modification rate. And what that means is, for folks not familiar with that, everyone in the industry on their workers' comp, if you're an average company, you pay ×1 of your workers' comp premium. If you have a poor safety record, the insurance company will assign a higher workers' comp mod rate. So it might be like, if you've had some issues, it might be 1.25. So they're going to take your base rate of your workers' comp premium and times that by 1.25. So you'll pay 25% more. In accredited companies, we see the reverse with a 0.85 mod rate. They're being given their premium, their workers' comp premium, and then that's times 0.85, so they save 15% on workers' comp insurance. So that's a real savings we see in the data we collect. We know companies tend to be more efficient. We're trying to get better at collecting that data, but we do have pretty good anecdotal data that companies will earn more gross revenue per production employee. And compliance is a whole nother thing. It's hard to quantify, but it's kind of avoiding fines. So avoiding fines from OSHA, avoiding DOT shutdowns. So, if you get a DOT audit, they could shut your fleet down until you fix it, so you can't roll your trucks, or a specific truck if it's a truck out on the highway. We know that accreditation and following our federal motor carrier safety regulations helps reduce that sort of cost. There's some other things that aren't as obvious that we do. I apologize, this graphic's a little blurry, but we know from some of the executive orders, went too far, coming out, that I-9s, your immigration forms, which is something we look at in accreditation, it can help you with if you don't do these. But we know that I-9 audits of companies is going to increase, and we also know that the fines associated with not being compliant with an I-9 have already gone up. They were jacked up in December, and this table kind of shows the increase in fines. Sorry, it's a little blurry, but one of the first offense fines has gone from about $500 to $5,500, so per employee. So if you had I don't know what the correct term is, they're using alien in this table, working for you, and you didn't know it, and you didn't have documentation, an I-9 on that person to prove otherwise, that's the fine you could get per person. So this is the type of thing accreditation does and helps you with, is trying to avoid these types of fines. It's hard to quantify, how you avoided a fine and how much that was, but we do work pretty hard to help you with these things. So just a couple other resources, and what we're going to do now in a bit is transfer over to Jen, who's going to walk you through that accreditation community and show you how to access the resources and some of the resources we have for you to build accreditation. And why we do that, Nate, if there's any questions you want to run by me right now that make sense, I can answer them. Here's a couple resources I'll leave up for a second. One is, if you're a small company, I wanted to point out Arbor Safety Training Institute. One thing you do need to be accredited is to have a CTSP. If you're a small company, you can apply for an ASTI scholarship to CTSP. Not too many people know about that. It's brand new. So I just wanted to point that out. That's a resource for you. We're also building something called the Tree Care Resources Hub. This is very new, but it's going to be a resource hub that really goes over what professional tree care is and providing resources for not so much residential clients, but your more commercial clients and municipal clients, providing resources for them to recognize what professional tree care is and how to contract for it. So, the intent there is to kind of have a rising tide that raises all boats. It helps everyone by promoting professional tree care, and certainly accreditation is part of that. So Nate, are there any questions you want me to answer right now before we switch over to Jen?
Yeah, Bob. What if we don't do work for the individual customer? Example, we don't do residential tree work. We work on large maintenance contracts for the energy industry, mostly pipeline. So how does the A300 proposal system work?
Okay, so utility accredited, what would be more appropriate there is utility accreditation. So there's a few differences in utility accreditation, and the A300 proposal system is one of them because it doesn't work quite as well in that situation. And I think that's a one-on-one. I could answer that with that person. Um, uh, and so that would be one of the main differences in utility accreditation.
Um, what are the usual 2 to 3 critical actions that most companies fail to complete?
Oh, critical actions. Yeah, we just went over that. We do track the critical actions. Um, uh, business plan. And Jen, if you want to chime in for what you remember from the last council meeting. Um,
So business
oh,
plan
oh,
is a possibility,
yeah,
but the
we
critical
looked at,
actions do
yeah,
vary between the enrollees who haven't been accredited yet having their first audit, and then established companies that have been accredited for a few years or many, many years. It can vary greatly. The number one would be critical actions related to hazardous communication.
HASCOM, yeah. We just we were just looking at that for how we update some of our resources because some of them are getting old and we're going through a series of updating the resources. And HASCOM came up first. It's the easiest one for OSHA to give you a fine on. And for those not familiar, hazardous communications is having a training, having a bit of a policy in a training once a year about any hazardous chemicals you have on site. The issue is for a tree care company. I mean, one, if you're doing PHC, okay, you have stuff on site, and you want to have your pesticide storage area placarded and secured and noted. And you want to have your SDS sheets in a book. That's each sheet for each material that you have. Um, I think a lot of the companies who have PHC don't have as many issues with that because they know about it and they do it. It comes up a lot for companies who don't have PHC because OSHA will still apply the HASCOM and give you a fine for it. It's actually the most fined item that tree care companies get fined for from OSHA because you still need to have SDS sheets and do a training for things like WD-40, oil, chain oil, gasoline, um, clean
Bleach.
fluids, bleach. Yeah. So you still need to do that. And because it's not as obvious as PHC type chemicals, a lot of companies miss doing that. So in accreditation, we ask you to do it, and we have a guide for how to do HASCOM, how to have a HASCOM program, and how to set up the annual training. So we help you do that, and that is kind of a different one. And then I think it was DOT, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations came up as well. So that's all having a driver's file, um, having med
Drug
exam
testing.
cards. Yeah, drug testing for CDL drivers, having med exam cards for for drivers, uh, doing DVIRs on your vehicles. Those are your daily vehicle inspection reports. And we, again, in accreditation, help you do all those things. There's some other things in the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations as well. But that is a top one as well. Um, and then, yeah, I think some
I
of
think
the
we
other
should.
ones were simple things like the CEO letter. We have a letter for the CEO to just verify that your company meets uh, generally accepted accounting principles. We don't do a full accounting audit or anything like that, but we do um, uh, want to see that a company can produce a financial statement and have an operating budget and those sorts of things. And we have some resources to help you do that if you don't. And then we also have a letter that the CEO signs, and that's one that sometimes is up there a lot because we just don't get that letter. Um, it's a simple
Yeah,
one.
so we should probably move on to the
Yeah.
community review, and then we'll do the rest of the questions because there will be more questions after that. So let
Okay.
me share my screen here.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, so After you have paid the enrollment fee, or are already an accredited company, my team would apply a security to your account to access the accreditation communities. There is a community for ResCom and a different community for utility. And anyone else will see access denied if they try to get on this page and they do not have the proper security tagged on their account. So you would initially, you do need to be logged in with your TCIA login. The easiest way to get there is to go to this quick links here. Otherwise, it's quite a lot of bouncing around at the moment. But we do also send an invite to the community once someone enrolls, so that there's a direct link in the email that you receive. So as I said, over here in business support links, if you're in the ResCom program, it's just called accreditation. If you're in the utility contractor, then it would be the utility contractor site. They have pretty much the same things, except yeah, it's making me log in. Except the utility checklist is slightly different because of the requirements. So you can go through the resource library right here, or you can scroll down past the announcements. Okay, so this is what the resource library looks like here. An enrollee will not see this marketing kit until after they have actually been accredited. So this website is a little bit different. Double clicking on something will not open it. You click on something once, it opens the folders. And then the first thing I want to show you here, the accreditation worksheet. This is the document you should be working off of. So you click it once to highlight it. As you'll notice, download appears now up in this menu, and you have to hit download, and then you will get a pop-up to open it up. I don't know why I keep getting that. So this, the first two columns are identical to the checklist that the office and the auditors use for the auditing process. These extra columns over here have some helpful information to guide you where you need to go to get resources. As it states up here, blue is mail-in information for newly enrolled companies only. So these items are going to be the ones that you'll be sending in for my team to review before the audit can be scheduled. Now, because I have this open, it's going to be a little difficult here. Let's see. I'll have to go back and forth, I think. So you'll see the numbers here on each of the folders. And then you'll see numbers here in column A. Those correspond. So if you're looking for 5.1.1, the business plan, you're going to go to that folder and open it up. We have intro to business plan. If you want to get a little bit more involved in planning out the business plan, you've got strategic and you've got advanced plan writing. But we also have the sample tree care business plan here so that you can get an idea of what we're looking for. It doesn't have to be exact, but it does, the business plan does need to contain the information that we're asking for. So as you see here, there are several items that pertain to the business plan. So all of those items need to be encompassed in the business plan that is provided to us. So that is an example of that. Let me close that up. We have many documents to help. We want to make this as easy as possible. The team is always here to help. Whenever you have questions or need any guidance, you can email accreditation@tcia.org, or you can give us a call. There are a few of us that can answer questions. We have a lot of templates, a lot of blank forms. All documents submitted for accreditation purposes need to be complete. A blank form is not demonstrating that you're meeting our requirements. The blank forms on here you can use and just put them on your company logo on there, or put them on letterhead, however you see fit. We do have on here the I2P2. That is the abbreviation for the TCIA Illness and Injury Prevention Program Safety Manual. That is an item that is included in your enrollment. It is a safety manual that you can basically use out of the box. You would have to update your company information throughout the manual, and also fill out the HAZCOM section with the chemicals that you have on site, who your HAZCOM contact would be. It could be a crew leader, it could be the owner, it could be an HR person. There's a lot of different forms available with the I2P2. We are in the works of updating the I2P2 because of the new ANSI standards that have or will be coming out very shortly. And as soon as that is available, it will be uploaded to this community so that anyone who has access to this community by being either enrolled or accredited will have access to the brand new I2P2 when it comes out. Let's see
Thanks,
here.
Jen. Thanks, Jen. I just want to point out that, yeah, that safety manual is one that knocks off a bunch of those checklist items, and you're about to do employee handbook.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's another one that knocks off a bunch of those items in the checklist.
Yes.
If you use follow our guide and our model.
Yep, so the employee handbook guide, the beginning is a guide of how to write your own employee handbook, but in the back is a sample tree care employee handbook, so that you can get an idea of what a handbook would look like. And you can use that sample and just fill in your own information, and a few tidbits to round it out. Like, for instance, the distracted driver policy, cell phone policy, whichever you call it, these are two versions of the same thing. Basically, only hands-free use of cell phones while driving a vehicle. That is not currently in the handbook, but we ask that you have those policies so you can add something to the handbook, whether it's your own words or using the policies we already have here. And that goes throughout. Like I said, we have a lot of templates, we have a lot of samples. Anything on here you can use, just about verbatim. And that's why it's here, to help your business. We want you to succeed, and that's why we're here to help. And I think we can probably do questions now, unless there's something else you would like me to point out, Bob.
No, that's great. Yeah, you're going to find more resources in there than you necessarily have to use for your company, but that's what we wanted to do, is try to cover as much as we could for you. I saw a question about does your company have to be in business for a certain amount of time? Actually, no. Your company does not have to be in business for a certain amount of time. There are some certification requirements, like having a certified arborist, having a CTSP, which is Certified Tree Care Safety Professional. that TCIA offers. Certified Arborist, of course, is offered by ISA. So there are some things like that that take time, but there's no requirement for a business to be in business for a certain amount of time. You just have to still meet the 66-point checklist. You might get a few more additional actions than a company that's been in business longer, because some of your processes might be brand new, but all the additional action would be in that case is, maybe checking in 9 months or a year to see that you're still doing those processes.
Bob, can a company be accredited in both Rescom and utility?
Yeah, we have companies, we call them dual accredited. They're accredited in both Rescom and utility. There's roughly about four, five, six different differences between utility accreditation and Rescom. But if you do one, it really sets you up to do the other easily. It makes it a lot easier.
And some companies think it's easiest to do both at the same time, because then the auditor only goes out for, a 2-day visit or whatever it is. And they're only submitting documents once for the mail-in process, except for those few items that are different.
Yeah,
Is
so the
accreditation
difference, Jim, real quickly, the differences are the A300 that we mentioned in the proposal writing. That's quite different. And sometimes with a utility you may be contracting with, they're not, for a valid reason, they may not be following A300 standards for certain things. So we have ways to work through that. We don't ask for the certified arborist, because that a lot of utility contractors just don't have the number of certified arborists that Rescom companies have. So we ask for a municipal ISA certified arborist municipal specialist, but just one for the company, and that would be it. So those are a couple of the biggest differences. We
TSP.
do
TTSP is very different.
CTSP is different. We're looking for the utility companies, safety trainers and managers to be CTSPs. In Rescom, we're kind of looking for each location to have a CTSP. So there's a difference there, and there's a few more little differences around that. But that's the big difference with CTSP.
Yeah.
In EHAP, all companies need to do some kind of electrical hazards awareness training, but for a utility contractor, since most of it's electrical utilities or involves electrical utilities, we ask that the company have an EHAP program, a true EHAP program set up. Yeah.
Jen, this is probably for you. At what point do we have access to the accreditation part of TCI's website?
As I said, for enrollees, they need to pay the fee, and then by the next day they will have access once we have processed it. Like I said, an invite will go out notifying them, inviting them to the community. A link will be provided there. They can go straight from clicking that link to logging into the system to accessing the community. So it is pretty immediate. I do see the time limit here. The accreditation enrollment, the initial fee covers 1 year. We ask that the mail-in be completed by month 10 so that there is enough time for the auditor to schedule the audit and get out and actually perform that audit before the end of that 1 year. We do have a 6-month extension available for purchase if by month 10 you realize that you are not going to be ready. And again, 2 months before the end of that additional 6 months, we would expect the mail-in to be complete so that there's time to finish the whole process.
You may have already answered this. How long does it usually take to get accredited? Average.
I mean, there are companies, we give a year I think the quickest that anyone has gotten accredited is maybe 2 months, and that is because they were a very well-established company. They were a larger company and already had almost everything in place before they did the enrollment. Just because they were so established already. We don't expect people to enroll and already have everything done. Because it is a process to learn how to build up your business. We want everyone to be have access to this that wants access to this to become accredited. But things happen. Staff turnover. Maybe the person in the office that was gathering all this paperwork ended up having to be out sick for a period of time, go on medical leave, leave for another job, and someone else had to take over. Things like that happen, and sometimes that means that extra time is needed while somebody else gets back up to speed. So while we think that most companies should be able to do it in a year, there are certainly plenty of companies that take longer than that. But there is a time limit. There will be so there's that year and a half, and we do expect companies to be done in the year and a half. There might be extenuating circumstances which would be dealt with separately. But at some point there is a cutoff.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to mention was we've approached this from the standpoint of here's the items, here's what you need to do, and here's the resources. Because it's a checklist program, the things you already have in place may already be checks. You may already be done with those and be complete. So those things, we'll just look at what you have and compare and let you know if it's complete. So there are companies that come in, and as Jen said, and a lot of the 66 points are already done.
Can you explain again the new consequences of having undocumented immigrant workers concerning insurance?
Sure.
We'll be having a separate webinar for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to get into a little bit here, but we are running out of time. So,
what time do we have? I'll get into it real briefly because it's important. And then we have a webinar coming up, which is maybe
March 6th.
You can post that March 6th. So we have a webinar and all the executive orders coming out around immigration, to really address the issues. So get on that for the full boat, the full boat answers really quickly on the I-9s. So companies are required to file I-9s, which is an immigration form for each employee that verifies their social security number and that sort of thing, at least the best you can in a way, as a person who's not necessarily qualified to do that, but you are required to keep that paperwork on site. One of the executive orders, so the one I spoke to directly, is asking that more I-9 audits be done. So these things could already be done. You could already get an I-9 audit where the Department of Labor wants to come in and check your records and see that you have the I-9s on file and that they're good and you're not employing people who aren't citizens of the United States. So that was already in place, but what's going on now is increased enforcement, so more I-9 audits coming down the pike. And already the fines have been increased for having someone who's not a citizen in the United States working for your company. So that's what I was showing you. There's a whole different caveat of fines there. First offense, second offense, third offense, that sort of thing, and the fees go up. But the fines have already been increased kind of astronomically. You saw that one I posted was first offense went from about $500 per person to $5,500 per person. So you really want to have those I-9s down, have them for each employee. Accreditation helps with that because we check and we let you know how you're doing. So it's kind of like a third party coming in without fines. But that's something you really want to get down as soon as you can.
I do just want to address one question. I don't believe that utility is any easier necessarily than residential commercial accreditation. I think while there are differences, I think the majority of it is the same. There's only a few differences. I did want to mention, because of this whole I-9 situation, that utility accreditation does require that you use E-Verify for your employees, which is a free government website to make sure that they're legal to work in this country.
Yeah, in that I saw that pop up from Daniel. Yeah, that's correct, Daniel. Of course, you can have documentation to be a guest worker, you can have a work visa, and that was kind of a misstatement of not being. You don't only have to be a citizen. I'm not sure what the right language is right now to use, so I was dancing around it.
Yes, it's a very volatile subject right now. All right, we only have 1 minute left. Are there any more questions? If you don't have a question right now, but you think of it later, you can certainly contact the office. You can contact your MME of your region, or you can, if it's specifically about accreditation, it can be accreditation@tcia.org. If it's about any of our business solutions, it can be businesssolutions@tcia.org. Yeah, like I said, we're gonna have that is that what, 1 or 2 weeks? We've got these other webinars coming up that'll be able to answer those I-9 questions.
And
This is
they'll
really
address.
more about accreditation right now.
And Jen, I saw the
Yep.
H2B pop up, so they'll address H2B at that webinar much better than we could speak to it.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, huge thank you to Bob for his time today, his expertise, and his support of the industry and TCIA. If you have any questions, please contact us, like I said, at businesssolutions@tcia.org, or specifically for accreditation at accreditation@tcia.org to speak with one of our team members. You're also welcome to call the main line. As a reminder, please complete the survey that you will receive shortly. And please check out the newly revamped TCIA.org to see what else is happening in the coming weeks. We hope you will join us for our upcoming webinars, how to complete EHAP only online in 1 day on February 27th, increased immigration enforcement, how TRICARE employers can prepare on March 6th, and 3 things you can do today to get more leads online, which is March 20th. Registration is already open, so click the link in the chat or go to tcia.org to sign up, and see you then. Thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.